Hey, welcome. Another episode of RPMHD NHRA Recap. I'm your host, Mike D, here with Dave W. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. Dave, you there?
Yes, sir. We can hear you
Oh, I
loud
don't know
and
if
clear.
Dave's there. Does Dave hear me? Dave, you there?
Yes, sir. I can
I
hear
don't know
you.
if Dave hears me.
I do.
Maybe he does.
I can hear you.
We'll
Yes, sir.
see. Well, I can't hear Dave, but hopefully Dave can hear me. You can hear me, right, Dave?
Yep.
Okay, I hear you now. We're good.
Okay, good,
Well,
good.
ladies and gentlemen, we're here for another recap show for the NHRA New England Nationals. If any of you guys watched it, you know it was a warm event. A lot of teams having troubles getting down the racetrack. It really put the crew chiefs to the test. But at the end of the day, your champ in top field, Doug Kalita, won the event. The GOAT, John Force, won in funny car. And Troy Coughlin Jr. stopped Eric Enders. That'll be a whole shot, but he beat her in the final round. Me and Dave are going to talk about this here for a quick minute or hour or so, or however long it takes. We're just having fun with this. Dave, starting off with Top Fuel. We don't have the highlights, but we do know, if you guys are reading across the ticker, that Doug Kalita wins the event, defeats Tony Schumacher, and only their 17th final or 19th final against each other. I would have thought it'd been more than that, considering the history these two teams have, or two drivers have. But it was only their 19th final in 95 matchups against each other, and Doug gets the win. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm like you. I when it came down to them running against each other, this first thing I did was I wanted to look up and see, and the prior final round meetings were 11-6, tilted in Tony's favor. So Doug kind of got a little bit back his way. But who would have thought Doug Kalita? Yes. Who had Tony Schumacher in the final round, though? I mean, that's back-to-back final rounds, even though it was at Bristol last year that he's been in Epping race final rounds for the New England Nationals. A very big, shocking surprise, considering their qualifying performance and their early round performance. But like I said, you give them enough cracks at it, they're going to start getting it down the track. I think that their Achilles heel in the final round was being stuck over in that right lane for the first time all day and not having any run notes and tune-up setup for it. Just crossed the edge and went up in smoke. I was hoping it would have been a side-by-side run to the finish line, epic battle like we had earlier in the day when round 2 of Nitro, and even the semis was pretty good, but round 2 Top Fuel was pretty epic, aside from Josh Hart smoking the tires.
Yeah, it actually was. And when you do think about the Tony Schumacher weekend, I mean, they didn't get down a track a single time in qualifying. I mean, they're lucky it was only, I think, 17 dragsters showed up, or maybe right at 16, because if that was Chicago, they wouldn't even make the field. I mean, they struggled throughout all 4 rounds of qualifying and the first 2 rounds of eliminations. I mean, they should have been gone round 1. I believe they had Brittany Force round 1, if I'm not mistaken, and
yep, and won at a pedal fest.
Yeah, and she was qualified number 3, looking for a bounce back weekend after the DNQ in Chicago, and qualified real strong. And yeah, she was on the trailer round 1.
Well, when you get all 4 qualifying sessions, go into eliminations, and it's the second round before you make your first 3-second run of the weekend, you don't usually make it that far.
No, you usually don't.
Not in a dragster anyway.
No, and not in today's field with everyone cutting the lights that they are, and just the way the close competition of the field. No, you're usually gone by round 1. And they say it's a right place, right time kind of sport, and you need a little luck going your way. And Tony Schumacher definitely pulled from the luck basket a few times on Sunday, all the way to the finals.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, he hadn't been in that right lane all day, and that might have been what bit him. I was thinking that Mike Neff probably had a hold of it and would probably make a race of it, but car went up in smoke. Doug Kalita gets the win. What can you say? I mean, the champ, he won a race.
And, I feel like they definitely get the comeback team award. When you look at their struggles, they're definitely on the upswing. Both cars, both Doug and Sean going to the semis, going rounds every race. You know, it wasn't too long ago we were looking at Doug going, man, is AJ helping the team? Like, was that a good move? They're really struggling. They're not doing too well, and now they're second and third in points. Going, and we're 6 races in a year. They're going rounds every race. Seemed like they got their tune-up back, and they are definitely the comeback team of. I mean, even through early 2023, they weren't looking like championship contending teams, but they got it around late at the countdown and ended up walking away with it. But it wasn't like they were putting away race wins and having all this great success the way that they are now.
No, I'd be the first one to mention. I believe Allen's first year with that team was 2022, and I was the one to say, if I'm Connie Coletta, I'm pissed right now because neither of those cars did anything, and it certainly didn't look like an Allen Johnson tuned car. And even going into 2023, it wasn't until a tire blew in Reading in the canopy car and they switched to the backup, then all of a sudden magic struck. Now, was it a coincidence? Was Allen testing throughout the regular season, and then was that the whole plan anyway? Not for the tire to blow, but for that team to have a turnaround starting in the countdown. Was it all a coincidence? We don't know, but we can say that since that tire exploding episode in the top end with the canopy car, which we haven't seen since that car, that team has done a complete 180, and now Sean Langdon's joined them with Brian Hughes and tuning. Yeah,
very true.
So, I mean, you look at the day of racing in Top Fuel, and like I say, it was hot day, tricky racetrack. I mean, Brittany Force, who I think I was expecting some things out of, especially after the testing and how bad things at debacle in Chicago. I was expecting that car to go rounds. Tony Schumacher's never an easy draw, but considering how he struggled in qualifying, you figure Brittany's got to have this one in the bag. Well, she smokes the tires just like she does. He out-pedals her to a 417 to her 431. Try again next week, Brittany. Justin Ashley, you never count that guy out. He's 032 on the tree. Smokes the tire within 300 feet. Josh Hart takes a 384. I mean, Josh Hart had a decent weekend. Went to the second round, lost to Tony Schumacher, but it was nice to see Josh Hart even win a round. Considering the year he's had, he hasn't had much of a better year than probably Brittany or Schumacher up to this point in the season.
No, and ironically, they're 8th, 10th, and 11th in points. So they are definitely bringing up the rear of the top 10 or just into the top 10, trying to get into it at this point. Very, very nice to see that team did well, got a round win on their side. Very surprising to see, like you said, Justin Ashley up in smoke. That team is kind of really been hit or miss lately. And I feel like once they get their consistency back, they're not going out there killing them on performance every weekend, but they're going out there and they're usually going rounds. So the fact that they went up and smoked the way that they did, you don't see that out of them that early. But
not that early.
Still holding on to the lead. Still got the points. So
true, yeah, you don't see them going smoke that early. And I believe it was in Q3 or Q4 they went like a low 380, which was a very good run for that time of day. And I figured with a run like that and having that type of data on that racetrack, the last thing I expected Mike Green to do and Justin Ashley was smoke the tires round one.
Correct.
Especially against Josh Hart, who has been struggling lately. His performance has picked up. It looked like a little bit this weekend. I just figured they would have laid up a little bit and just made sure it got down the track, and I figured they could outperform them. But for them to smoke the tires, that was a shock to me.
It was. I think it was unusual. Not that there wasn't really a good lane or a bad lane, but it seemed like you could go up and smoke in either one, but it seemed like you had more clean runs out of the left lane than the right lane. So I was surprised that they ended up over there.
Yeah, that is a shock. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they did have lane choice. They're the number 6 qualifier. Hart was number 11. So obviously they saw something in that lane that they liked. The lane just didn't like them.
And even Josh Hart, when he came back for round 2 against Tony Schumacher, lane choice, he's the one that went over to the right-hand lane. He picked that one, and it bit him.
Yeah, it definitely did. Another shock had to be Antron Brown. Last week's winner. I mean, I can't say shock because if you lose in Top Fuel nowadays, the fields are so tight. And if you draw a tough opponent, I mean, it can go either way. But with Antron pretty much flying beneath the radar in Chicago and then winning the race, he didn't have an easy draw. He might have had a draw that had been struggling, but it was not an easy draw considering he had Tony Stewart round one.
Right.
And Antron in that left-hand lane smoked the tires, a 443. Tony gets down there, put a few holes out, I believe, towards the finish line, wins 397, gets the job done.
It's amazing to think that that car was in title contention last year with Leah driving it, but you also knew that there's going to be a learning curve for Tony, so can't be too hard on him. Same with Jasmine Salinas stepping in way sooner than she thought she would into her dad's dragster. Flashes of brilliance, but just haven't had the luck and the success to go with it.
No, they haven't. And with Tony's car, I'm not going to so much blame the driver as I am just going to say adaptation of the crew chief, because Neil Strasbaugh was doing a great job with Leah. Tony's been on the record saying that I'm 55 pounds heavier, and it's kind of been a struggle. I believe he mentioned also with the new specs as far as the thickness of the chrome mallet with the chassis, combine that with the 55 pounds, it's just been something that Neil Strasbaugh has had to adapt to, and I'm sure he'll figure it out, as most great crew chiefs do. I mean, he struggled his first year with Leah, came back last year. They were pretty much runner-up for the championship. I think they finished third, but they were right there, winner-take-all final. 55 pounds, I'm going to say, has to be a lot, obviously, considering where it's sitting at in the car and them trying to move weight around, and it's just been a struggle. I do know, I was reading that they did go testing in Indy along with the Brittany Force team. Hopefully this is a sign of them going in the right direction. I mean, considering their weekend, it's not like they gave anything away. They lost a really close race in that next round, I believe, to Torrance. Billy, that is. That was a race that Stewart very well could have won. So I'm gonna sit here. To me, I think it's signs of improvement and that they're on the right path. Well, actually, they lost to Doug Coletta. I'm sorry, they lost to Doug Coletta in the second round, 384 to 384. Coletta went 84 with a 1. Stewart went 84 with an 8. Stewart was 55 on a tree. Doug was 60. Very close race, but they showed some signs. Going back to Antron, I can't say it's a shock losing in the first round. It's just got to suck, especially after coming off a win in Chicago, to pretty much give it all back the next race.
Well, and having to both Nitro winners too, as we'll get to in Funny Car as well. It was just like, it was like a one weekend flash, and you kind of think that that's like the precursor of, okay, they got a good hot weather tune-up going forward, bodes well for Epping and Bristol and the races coming up. So it was very surprising to see him out first round this weekend. Yeah.
But credit where credit's due. Doug Coletta got the win, beat his arch rival or former arch rival or rival in the final round, and Tony Schumacher. Tony put up a good fight for about 300 feet, and that was it. Doug's right there. I mean, you got to believe with the way that team's been running since Reading the last year, they're going to be a factor the rest of the season. I don't see them going anywhere, especially that Sean Langdon car. That team Coletta is pretty strong right now. Gerald Ty's nothing to sneeze at. We'll get the Funny Car in a second, but any last thoughts on Top Fuel? And we can get the Funny Car if you got, unless you got anything, last thoughts you want to speak on about Top Fuel.
Well, Top Fuel has been very, I guess you'd say, topsy-turvy the last couple of years, and this year in particular. And some of the questions that I pose are more, are the Coletta teams excelling, or are the teams that were used to running well, the Torrances, Brittany, Leah's team, have they just kind of fallen off and they're right back in the clutches of everybody else? Justin Ashley is still pretty consistent, but he's been wildly inconsistent when it comes to the countdown. If he could have, I mean, now look at it this way. We're 6 races into the year, so we are basically a countdown worth of races into the season. If he could string together the last 6 events like he does the first 6, the man's your champion.
Correct.
So it'd be interesting to see.
What I would say to that question is, I think when it comes to the Torrance team, I don't think their performance is falling off. I think everyone is caught up.
Okay.
With the Torrance team. I mean, he had 4 years of dominance where, I mean,
yeah,
I think that eventually they're gonna catch up, and I think that's pretty much what happened. With Leah's car, I'm gonna say it's the weight factor with Tony because I believe Tony's been driving well. He's been having decent lights. I haven't seen him get the car out of the groove or make any serious driving errors. Josh Hart's team, I think they're just trying to figure it out, whatever it may be. I think they brought John Stewart in, I was saying, to help them piece things together and get them pointed back in the right direction. Tony Schumacher's team, I don't know. I'm not going to even try to get. I don't know. I mean, you got Mike Neff, Phil Schuler, and forgive me, I forget the guy's name he used to tune for Force. Schaefer. You got 3 pretty sharp heads over there, and they show flashes where they'll throw a 68 up there every once in a while, but the consistency, which is what Mike Neff has usually been known for when he was a funny car tuner, was he was a very consistent tuner. He may not always run low ET, but he was very consistent, especially in hot weather. I don't know. I really don't know, and I'm kind of baffled with the Schumacher team because I really don't know what to say about that car.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the next couple of races play out, though, if the hot weather tracks play into their hand a little bit better.
It didn't play into their hand this weekend. They just pulled from the luck bank. I mean, they had literally out of 8 times going down the track, that car was up in smoke 6 of them.
Right.
Including the finals.
Yeah.
Well, 4 in qualifying, the first 2 rounds, and the finals. That's 7. I mean, I think the only time they didn't smoke the tires was the semis, maybe. Well, no, round 2 they didn't.
Round 2 either. They met a couple of 388, 86 in second and semis.
You're right.
But for a team that's used to not having 4 qualifying sessions, we usually have 3 at some of these events.
Yeah.
And they're out first round. Being able to make those extra laps and add to the logbook can only be a good thing.
You figure that.
I don't think that they were out there testing like everybody else was.
No, especially not in qualifying where you're trying to make this field. I just think they're behind the curve, but I have to think with a team that's that talented that they will eventually get there eventually. Mike Neff's too proven of a crew chief not to, but we shall see.
Mike Green, you mean? Mike Green.
Mike Green.
Yes.
Well, Neff's on Schumacher's car. Green's on Ashley's car.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Ashley's car, Justin Ashley's car, I think they're okay. I think they just missed it, honestly. I mean, they have been hit or miss lately, but that car can run off the next 3 in a row for all we know. I mean, he is, when it comes to driving and reaction time, that guy is, Justin Ashley is just, I mean, he was 37 on the tree. I mean, what he's done to Top Fuel Racing is what Steph Curry has done to the 3-point shooting. He's changed the whole game and leaving the starting line in Top Fuel Racing. I think before Justin Ashley arrived on the scene, guys would just kind of go up there and just cut their lights and let the car do the talking. And he's pretty much changed the narrative on that. I mean, he makes you be 60 or better on the tree. I mean, nowadays, if you're not 60 better in Top Fuel, you're late.
And if you look at most of the reaction time performances of the field throughout, a lot of them are in that 50, 60 range. There's a couple of them like Sean Lane that could throw out a 30, just like Josh Hart does. And, Tony Stewart's good for a 40 or a 50 sometimes. Justin Ashley, though, I mean, I think as I scroll through these real quick, just to kind of take a quick peek here, best reaction time of race day on a losing run, unfortunately, with that 032 in first round.
Yeah, I mean, what he's done, I think he's made the whole Top Fuel field step their game up on the starting line. The reaction time has never been so important that it is now in Top Fuel racing, and I believe that was the start of when Justin Ashley showed up to the track.
Yeah.
All right.
And the last thought on Top Fuel is with his 54th career win, Doug Coletta reties Steve Torrence for 4th all time. Both of them are only 5 behind Antron, and then they're only 8 behind Larry Dixon for 2nd all time. So it'd be interesting to see, with as many events as we have throughout the year and as good as those teams are running, including Antron picking up a win, Doug picking up a win, and Steve's good for 1 or 2 here and there.
Yeah.
The top 5 winningest drivers in Top Fuel, 4 of the 5 of them are still competing, and 2 of the 5 of them were in the final round this last race. So you're seeing the best of the best battling it out right now live in 2024.
No, and it should be a show throughout the rest of the season. Another thought on that, Ben, that you just brought up those numbers. Doug Coletta's been racing since, I want to say, 97, 98.
98.
98.
Yep.
98 was his first year. And here are we in 2024. Steve Torrence has only been around since maybe, I remember he was around, he was driving for maybe Dexter and maybe 06, 07, every blue moon.
He was there in 06, but his first win didn't come till 2012.
2012.
So they're tied in wins, but it took Steve from May of 2012 to July of last year at Seattle to get his 54 wins.
Correct.
It took Doug from Sonoma of 98 to this past race to get his number of wins.
And it just shows you how dominant Steve Torrence was over the past 5 years.
Yes.
We're not going to just say the years that he won the championship, because even that year where he lost to Brittany in 2017, Steve had a very good car. And
sure.
That just shows you, that guy, man, he was pretty dominant, man. He had about a 5-year run there with 4 championships where he just amassed. He swept the countdown.
Right. He had a Tony Schumacher and a John Force and a Greg Anderson and a Gage Herrera type season where he just won everything there was to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think that those days are over yet. They may not be as dominant where you're stringing the wins back to back to back to back the way that they were, but I still think he's got a multiple win season coming for him.
Oh, yeah, definitely. What was his greatest season? Do you know that off the top of your head between, I would say, 2018 and 2021?
I believe 18 was the best.
Okay.
But when you say his greatest season specifically, are you referring to the amount of round wins that he had?
Round wins and wins.
Season, the amount of race wins? Like, how were we qualifying this? Because obviously 2018 was the year that he swept the countdown.
I would say round wins and race wins.
Okay. Well, let's take a quick peek real quick here just to compare. As I bring it up. So it looks like in his 2017 season, even, so we're going to go back one more prior to that.
Okay.
2017, he was 56-16 in round wins. In 2018, he was 58-13 in round wins. In 2019, he was 60-15 in round wins. And in 2021, he was 60-9. And he won 11 races both in 2018 and in 2021, but he had 2 more round wins between those 2 particular years. So, but 2018, you could look at it and say, well, 6 races into countdown, won them all. So, but he won half of them in 2021. So he was still almost there, but he was 24-0 perfect in the countdown, 22-4 record in the countdown in 2021. So, it depends on how you weigh it. I would say that just statistically speaking, because of how unlikely it is to ever happen again, 2018, even though he had 2 less round wins overall, sweeping the countdown when it counted the most and being perfect, I would give that one the nod. But those 4 years in general just crushed the competition.
So what I was going to compare it to, I was going to try to compare Steve Torrance's greatest year
Yeah.
2008 Tony Schumacher with the 15 wins, 18 finals, and see how did they compare. But sounds like Schumacher still got him. That 2008 Schumacher season was just crazy.
Well, if you want to go back to 2008, that 24 race season, yes, Tony Schumacher was 76-9, and he won 15 wins.
Yeah, that's
never lost in the first round, 9 number one qualifiers, only 5 losses in the second round, 1 in the semis, 3 runner-ups, 15 wins. But went the entire whole season never losing in the first round, which, you know, guys like Robert Hyde have done that in Funny Car in their dominant eras. But as you go through, even in Steve Torrance's most dominant season, in 2018, he still had 3 first-round losses, and in 2021, he still had 1 first-round loss. So, yes, if you were trying to compare the two of them, and those 24, well, 2018 would be the closest comparison because it's a 24-race season versus only 20. No, Tony Schumacher, hands down, is still the most dominant season comparatively speaking.
And when you say I don't think we'll ever see a season like that, I don't think we'll ever see a season like that in Top Fuel.
Like Tony's? Oh, like Tony 2008, I agree. I think that was a once in a lifetime. And it's not like he wasn't good early in the season too, but the big talk of the time was once we switched to 1,000 foot, that was AJ's wheelhouse because he was trying to circumvent the rev limiter in the last 220 feet anyway to get down that course. So if you're moving the finish line back to where he could just roll that power on the whole way, it was game over at that point.
Yeah, and I believe the cover National Dragster, I believe after Denver said, new distance, same results.
Right.
I believe. Right. I mean, that was just, yeah. I mean,
they shortened the track, but they were still hitting it all the way to the 1,000 foot anyway.
Yeah, it was. That was just a crazy year. Well, funny car. John Force did it. I mean, he won for the, I believe it was the 157th win. Yeah, 157th win. I think he's still got more left in him. He beat his teammate in the final round. For those who didn't see, he's going across the bottom there, a 408 to a 409. Beat Austin Prock in the final. John Force didn't. I mean, I don't know if he really had a tough fight against him all day. I mean, he just kind of moseyed his way to the final round. It didn't seem like he had the. He beat Buddy Hall round 1. He ran at 396 to Buddy Hall's 449. He comes up against Blake Alexander. He goes 405 to Blake Alexander's 423. I think his only tough race was J.R. Todd. Todd had 200s on him. Force went 399. Force is 399 and Todd's 405. And Austin Prock in the finals, I mean, heck, that was closer than Todd, but he had Austin had a hole out the whole runner. He probably would have beat John. 408 to Force's 408 to Prock's 409. I mean, he didn't have to race against a Caps or a Hagen or, Todd. Okay, JR, we give him that. I mean, that's always a tough draw. But I mean, it was pretty easy, smooth day for John. I mean, he had no troubles. I mean, didn't have to pedal the car not one time. I don't think the car even put a hole out the whole day. I mean, he just stepped on the gas, and I mean, he has a very easy car to drive right now. Very easy.
That was definitely a classic John Force day. And I mean, looking at the way that the car has performed, the way that John has performed, Brock got him in qualifying. He had a little bit better number there. But those two cars pretty much have been mirroring each other lately. And for John to have the same consistency and go to same rounds, round 2 was really the only time with the 398 to the 405 was, when they really kind of had a big enough discrepancy in between them. But those two cars, I mean, John was even quicker in first round with a 96.7 to Proc's 97.0. And with the 108 light makes me think like John almost even shallow staged it there. He didn't really take his normal deep mannerism on race day to run that number
didn't.
to get lane choice. So those two cars right now are seemingly set up perfectly, and John is just getting it done, just flat getting it done.
No, he is, and I mean, I don't know if he's still chasing championships or not. I've seen in interviews where he kind of feel his legacy is sealed, and he's just trying to keep the JFR brand going. But he's definitely in the hunt for a championship. I mean, I believe he's second in the points right now.
Yes. I mean, obviously the points I'll get reset anyway when we get to towards the end. But
yeah,
he's another guy that, we're 6 races in right now. And if this was it, if this was the last 6, he's only 22 behind Brock. Now, if it was the last 6 and he happened to come in as the number 1 seed and got that 10 or 15 point advantage, we're looking at qualifying points or bonus points, and we're looking at a dead heat for this championship potentially. So, man, it's hard not to get excited to think that the man could potentially contend for a championship, and the reality that this could potentially be the last full-time season for him with the way that he was acting and talking after winning this event.
That's what it sounds like. That this definitely might be his last full-time year, and maybe I mean he might. I don't know. Knowing John, it's hard to say because he loves this stuff so much. It's almost like, what would he do if he couldn't drive? I mean, maybe he does come and runs sparingly with Peak as a sponsor. 10 races a year throughout the year. I don't know, and only time will tell. If he wins the championship this year, does that light a fire under him to come back and run another full season, assuming that this is his last year?
No, I think if he wins the championship, he goes out on top. I think the problem with John is I could kind of relate it to when my dad stopped racing and we stopped going out with the car. My dad just turned 81, and he's like, my mind's there. I want to go do it. I want to travel. I want to go do this stuff. But my body's just starting to give out. It just starts hurting. I can't sit here for this amount of time. I can't this. I can't that. And John gave the impression, the way he was saying in his interviews, and he was like, thank you, fans. Thank you this. Thank you that. Sponsors, you know who you are, but it's the people that make this sport. And this is where I live. I live on the road. And he has been living on the road for the last 50 plus years. And I mean, we look at him as a race car driver, but at the end of the day, he's still a human being. And he's still a 75-year-old human being who maybe his knees hurt, maybe his hips hurt, maybe he's got problems that he is dealing with that he doesn't ever really discuss or talk about. But, he's like, he gave me the impression that it's almost getting too hard for him to strap into that race car and do what he does to the level that he does.
And maybe nothing hurts. Maybe he's just tired.
If you ever look at him, I mean, he spends a lot of time on his scooter, but if you ever watch him like walking around the pits, he's limping, he's hobbling. He has survived some of the worst fires in the category. He survived that terrible crash in 2007 that should have ended his career then. I mean, he was in his 50s when that happened. He should have just walked away at that point. Now he's in his 70s, still out here, still winning races, still adding to his record. And, I think all of us, just as fans of the sport in general, would love to see an athlete go out on top and not go out faded off into oblivion. So if the successes continue, I feel like that would be a storybook ending for John. But I feel like sometimes the way that he's talking now and the way that he's talking about Proc and the future, I think that the story is ending regardless.
We'll see. We're only 6 races in. Things can change. Maybe he'll get a boost in adrenaline by Indy. And things will change. I mean, I feel like if he's going to announce something, I feel like Indy will be the race he'll do it at. If he's going to announce that this is it, I feel like Indy will be that. So we'll see. We'll see. Huge round 1 matchup, though, in Funny Car. Capps versus Hagan. Ron Capps versus Matt Hagan, round 1.
And Capps, it was a rematch of last week, too.
Yeah. And Capps has definitely been struggling all year. I mean, that car has been. I mean, I know they're working on some new things. They had a new chassis. I think they were working on some new clutch discs, whatever the case may be, or new clutch setup, clutch pack, I should say. But I don't know what Hagan was doing. I didn't expect that to happen. I thought it was just going to be a good old side-by-side race. From Guido's perspective, it looked like they said, look, let's just take a mid 4.0 and just get down the track and see what we can do. And that's what they did. And lo and behold, by 200 feet, Hagan's done. And thanks for coming. And, it's kind of it was unexpected to see the Hagan car up in smoke that early and gone.
It was.
And it was unexpected to see those two guys run round one. That's what I didn't expect. How often do you see that? You don't. But it just goes.
And then you see it at back-to-back races of all things.
Yeah. It kind of it's a trip. Hagan qualified 5th, Caps was 12th, and Dickey is usually pretty good on warm racetracks. I mean, that's kind of his thing. He can get down on a hot, slippery racetrack, and that didn't happen. Unfortunate but true. Surprise of the weekend to me would have to be probably, well, I can't really call it a surprise, but it was a surprise. Blake Alexander ran exceptionally well throughout qualifying, throughout the weekend. Lost to John Force, was actually ahead of John before the car quit on him. Don't know if it dropped a cylinder or just quit. I don't know what exactly happened there, but Blake Alexander definitely, with Jim Head Tuning, has a car to be reckoned with, as he always does. You never know what Jim Head's going to do. I mean, he can drop a low one on you, or sometimes he'll go up in smoke. But Blake Alexander did have a very good weekend for that team. Very well could have won the race, assuming everything stuck together. But hey, that's drag racing. That's how it goes.
It is. But 2 solid back-to-back awesome showings for the Blake Alexander and Jim Head team. I think that he hit the tune-up right. He excelled and ran in the 90s when he had to, into 390s in the better weather. But he was 4-0 them to death when it comes to race day, just like Chicago. Just get it down the track.
No, he definitely was. And, I mean, that car, it seems to be pretty consistent as of right now. And that's a good thing. And that's bad for the competition, but good for those guys. Another guy you got to give kudos to, Chad Green. Beat Alexis DeJour in the first round. He was 397, almost low for the round, second or third quickest of the round, I think, behind Proc and Force. And lost in the second round to Proc. 402 to Proc's 398. Would have beaten any other car in that round except for Proc, and that's who he was racing. Wrong place at the wrong time for Chad Green. But as we realized last year, Chad Green is no one to take lightly at all. I mean, he is pretty much a semifinal fixture on most given weekends, and he seems to be just picking up where he left off from last year.
He really is. And it's surprising because it seemed like they were starting to struggle early in the season. It was kind of like they lost their magic a little bit, but they've come back and seemingly got it back. And it's it's only a few good showings. Obviously, the overall picture shows that they're still getting out of the hole because they're still 9th in points, over 270 back out of Austin Proc's lead, and 250 back out of Force in second. So, you definitely got the big 4 up front with Proc, Force, Hagan, and Todd. But keep building on that momentum, keep building on the consistency, get towards the end of the year, and they could definitely be a countdown contender again.
No, you're right. And they struggled a little bit at the beginning of the season. I was just going to figure because Daniel Wilkerson, who had took over the driving duties for Tim Wilkerson, his dad, with him missing and them having to kind of get things synced or how they were going to gel that together. It seems like they're on the right track now. Sometimes you start off a little rough, learning new things, new crew chief involved. He was still part of the team. He's just new crew chief, making the decisions. I'm sure they're still getting help from Daniel and Tim. And it looked like it just took them a couple races to get it all sorted out, but they seem to be on the right track as of right now.
They definitely are. And I'm glad that you brought up Daniel Wilkerson, because how about that team? Final round showing in Charlotte, the semifinals at Joliet, and the semifinals here at Epping. They're going rounds too.
No, they definitely are, and they seem to be just as consistent as the Chad Green car. I mean, neither one of those guys are a guy you want to face because they're not going to give it to you. They're going to make you earn it. They don't really smoke the tires against you too much. I mean, they're going to make you beat you. And prime example this past weekend in Epping. I mean, he had to beat him. Daniel Wilkerson went 401 to Austin Prox 399. I mean, he didn't give it to him whatsoever. I mean, he made him earn it, and that's the name of the game, man. I mean, if you know you can't run what they can, but you're 100 for 2 off, just take your 102 and see what happens, and that's what they're doing.
I agree, and it's paying off well for them. And I feel like, I mean, it's not like I'm the only one that is of this opinion. Most people have said that the next new first-time Nitro winner is very likely going to be Daniel Wilkerson, and I wouldn't be all that surprised if we didn't see it here upcoming here in Bristol or even Norwalk, where hot racetrack. I mean, last year we had Blake Alexander come out, pick up a win. It kind of favors those conditions and those types of tune-ups, and it could be coming sooner than we think.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, I have to agree with you. Daniel Wilkerson, I believe his day is coming. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's within the next 3 or 4 races, if not the next one. Struggle bus. Cruz Petragon. New crew chief, new hopes, same results.
You know, the problem is you don't want to. This is not meant as a knock on anybody. This is just the facts and the points and you know where it all stacks up. We're 6 races in. Cruz Petragon is 12th place in points, over basically 3 complete events behind Austin Prock in number 1. So again, if we're using this 6-race window as a benchmark, if this was a countdown performance, man, they're not even like countdown contender, countdown player, to be 12th in points. I mean, behind Paul Lee, and again, not to knock Paul Lee, Blake Alexander, those guys are ahead of Cruz in points. And, you know, I'd have to check my statistics to make sure, but I don't even know. Some of those guys might not have even run all the races.
I know Paul Lee hasn't, and that guy has a very good car. No one wants to race that car right now. I mean,
right, and he's got 20 more points than Cruz does.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but true.
Which tells you the telling part of it isn't a knock on those other guys. It's just the telling part of it is that's how much Cruz's team is struggling and how much bad luck they've had and how much, you know, just early exits they've had, race in and race out, unfortunately.
Yeah. Everyone starts the year with a lot of promise. Everyone. But I would think so. They have high hopes.
Yeah.
Cruz more so than anyone. I mean, he brings a new team in, they test, things seem to go well in testing, and then things fall off the moment the season starts. It happened last year. They brought Beard in at the end of 2022, Lee Beard, to work with John Collins, and showed great results at Pomona at the end of the year. Came into 23 with high hopes, thinking they could pick up where they left off, and no. And it just seems to be, I don't know if it's the same problems, but they're problems. And I don't know what those problems are. And maybe one of us can talk to Cruz. I don't know which race I'm going to go at next. And maybe I'll get an interview with him and I'll just find out what's the problem. I mean, because we all want to see Duke Cruz does well. He's a 2-time champion, major backing from Snap-on. It sucks to see a guy who's this passionate about the sport run like this. Really and does. He's trying. It's not the lack of effort.
No. Well, and I don't think it's for a lack of passion either. I mean, the man has been out here doing this for, well, at least in the Nitro Funny Car ranks. His first year was 1992. So, I mean, he's 30-plus years into this, doing this, and he's out here every year almost full time, except for save the year that he was in the booth and the year that he was having sponsor troubles, but in the early 2000s. But I mean, he's a staple to the class. And, you know, you just kind of, you look at it and you always hope that guys who put into the sport and give into the sport, dedicate their life to the sport, have a better success than, you know, what he's been having. And especially for what he's invested into the sport and invested into his crew. I mean, I don't think that they really want for anything. At least it doesn't seem like that. But I know when he was interviewed earlier in the year, he said, our biggest thing, more so than winning rounds, is representing Snap-on well, having the hospitality guests, looking good for the sponsor, putting on we're out here as an ever, we want to win and we want to race, but the fact that we could kind of show the corporate people a good time and put people in tool trucks potentially, which is obviously the name of the game of the sponsor. You're getting these people out to the races. Maybe they want to be Snap-on franchisees. Then their mission accomplished, even if their results on the track don't match what they're doing.
Yeah, and that is the business aspect of it and the marketing aspect of it, and that's what the sponsors pay you to do. We'll see. I'm not gonna comment on it. I mean, I get it, I understand it, but I would think that and what do I know? I know that sponsors still want to see results on the racetrack as well. And like I said, I know it's not for lack of effort on Cruz's part. I know the guy's trying. I know they're trying to get it figured out. And I think they will. I think it's just, I said that last year, but I think they will. And we'll see. We'll see. It's just one of those years, and it's been one of those years for the last few years, and it just sucks to see a guy, a champion, who was that vested in the sport, not be able to perform at his best at this time. But it seems like right now, John Force Racing, with John Force and Austin Prock, tend to have, I'm not going to say a stranglehold, but they got a pretty tight grip on the field.
I wouldn't go as far to say that they are going to be the only two, but so far they're the best two. But Matt Hagan and J.R. Todd are not too far behind.
No, they're not. And I'm not going to count out Dickie Venables. I'm not counting out Dickie Venables anytime soon. That Dickie Venables has been around too long. He's too proven. I believe that they'll get it fixed up. I mean, that's a team that can go win Bristol next week and put themselves right back in the name of things. So I'm not going to count them out. Am I worried about Caps? Not yet. I'm going to give them until Indy to see if things are, I know teams have been known to use these races as test events until we get to Indy and then, pretty much unfold the cards and show what they got. So I'm not going to hold on.
By the time you get to Indy, they'll be on a 1-year losing streak or winless streak if that's the case, if they haven't broke out by then.
Yeah, but I'm going to give Guido till Indy. I think they're just figuring it out. I figure by the time we come out of the Western swing, if it's even a swing this year, whatever you want to call it, I look for some light to be at the end of the tunnel. And maybe this weekend was a light. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. A car that I'm probably worried about as we go into the summer months, Tasca. That car has proved to run very well when conditions are right and the track temp is down and there's a night qualifying effort or, it's track temps below 120. As the summer comes and we go to places like Norwalk and places like Sonoma where it gets hot, I don't know. And I don't know if you saw Tasca's interview, he seemed a little frustrated with the loss where they got to be able to run in the heat. Right. And I don't know if they can. Granted, when the countdown starts, we're in fall, and you tend to get cooler weather at some of the tracks. Dallas can be hot sometimes, but I'm worried about that team over the next few races, man. I don't know. I don't know if they can adapt to the heat so well.
Well, he did win the New England Nationals last year in Bristol in the quote-unquote heat. So, but most of his summer performances were not the greatest. And yes, he did win when we got to Topeka in August, but that was such a rain delayed and overcast and pushed into the night event that the weather was much cooler. The guys are running 380s at Topeka. So I wouldn't really call that like a hot. It wasn't like the peak of the 90s when it was 100 degrees and sweltering. That was a good weather race. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see if, as the season progresses, can Force and Proc stay matching each other, because that's the sad part is the countdown, the narratives of the season, and everything that goes on kind of takes away from what we should be looking at. Is this is a mano-on-mano battle of the old guard, 75-year-old John Force getting ready. He's got 1 foot out of the cockpit, and brand new rookie Austin Proc stepping in for Robert Hite, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently if John gets out of the seat, racing, quote unquote, for that ride. And they are going toe-to-toe, round for round, number 1, number 2 qualifiers, trading back and forth low ETs, both running 382 flats, getting into the top 10 quickest, and trading wins back and forth. And they're 1 and 2 in the points, 20 points apart from each other. I mean, that would be a good season narrative. The rookie in the class and the veteran in the class, they're on the same team and they're battling out, and nobody's picking up that storyline, and that's a shame.
Because we don't know how the story is going to play out. And when I say that, it's because if we come down with 3 races left in the season and it's those 2 cars, will Force just give it to them?
You know what? I'm going to say no, because he owes it to Peak and Chevrolet and everybody he's got AAA on his car too. He's got Monster on his car too. He owes it to those guys to go out there and push for that championship.
Yeah, but you can make it look good while giving it away at the same time. And if you're trying to build the new guy up, because it seems like Force is more so, even in his win this week, he was more trying to build up Proc than celebrate his own win, and it's like, if there's 3 races left and they're pretty much even and they have to meet up in round 2, we've seen this story.
For the sake of argument, I hope that the story plays out that if the 2 of them are far enough ahead in points where they know they're going to be 1-2 and they're just battling it between each other, I hope that they battle it between each other. And it doesn't just go one way or the other. And it isn't, I feel like there's so much on the line, and there's so much more that John can do for JFR by winning a championship than by Brittany, Robert, or Austin Proc in his rookie season winning a championship. Personally, I feel like the storylines of John winning would be, I guess, more further reaching, more mainstream, more, wow, this 75-year-old man is leaving his sport of professional drag racing with 3-second, 330-mile-an-hour race cars on the top of his game. And there are, I was just curious. I did a Google search of oldest athletes to win in other sports. Like most guys, the oldest to win in the NBA finals has been 37. I mean, John's almost 40 years older than that. And somebody, baseball players, most of the guys are out by their 50s. And John's out here, and I don't think that that's a knock on the sport of drag racing. I don't think that the narrative should be, oh, well, drag racing must be easy if this 75-year-old guy can get out there, strap into that machine, and go out there and win races. No, I think that speaks to just what a superhuman athlete that John Force is at his age and all that he's been through to still be out here doing this. And it's not necessarily like a fluff piece or trying to build him up to something he's not. I mean, the facts are the facts. What 75-year-old man in any sport does anything? Name another 75-year-old in any sport. Even the golfers, even in the senior PGA Tour, you don't have guys out there that age swinging a club and winning majors. You know what I mean? If you really sit back and look at it, this is all history in the making, and we're sitting here as part of it, and we're lucky enough to have it in our sport.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is maybe some old guy in the World Series of Poker. That's about it.
Right.
That would probably be the only thing I could come up with as far as someone at that age still at the top of their game, which is pretty remarkable within itself, driving a 300-mile-an-hour car and still being able to control it.
Yeah, look at most 75-year-olds on the road. Not to knock on the 75-year-old people, but there's some guys out there that shouldn't be even having a driver's license.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Credit to him. I hope that the year finishes strong for him. I would like to see him win another championship, but if he doesn't, I would like to see him go down swinging and not just going down.
Correct. Well, and that's the thing. That's why I hope that it's more of a fight between the two of them and not what you're possibly suggesting, that it's just like, well, we got to build up, the generation next, or the next generation drivers, and Proc's the future. Proc is the future. So get what you can get while you can get it, and then let him do it when you're on the sidelines.
Correct. That would be my take on it, and we'll see where it goes. Hopefully it plans out the way the fans get a real treat throughout the rest of this year, and they get to see him go down or go up, however you want to view it, the way he should. Pro Stock. Who picked Troy Coughlin Jr. to win an Epping this weekend? Because I didn't.
I did not either. That was definitely a bracket buster. I had Erica Enders Dallas Glenn final on my side of things. I did not see Troy Jr. getting this far in eliminations, let alone picking up the win on a hole shot over Erica.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that ruined a lot of people's brackets. And then considering the fact that he beat Erica on a hole shot at that was just like, wow. That does not happen too often.
And
credit to Troy.
The kid called his shot. He's like, I got to have a light in the teens to have a chance. And he comes up with a team light in the final, and he won the race.
To have a chance, because you figure she's going to be at least 020. I mean, She wasn't 020, but you figure that's where she's going to be about. And credit to him. I mean, he did what he had to do. He went for it. He went for the throat, and he got it. Great win for that team. Elite. This was pretty much their weekend to lose. I mean, Greg Anderson struggled mightily in qualifying. I mean, he did throw up that one great 6:53 run, but that was about all she wrote for Greg. I mean, by round one, he was beating the traffic heading out of here, and that was it for him.
He didn't do good in the mission challenge either, unfortunately.
No, not at all. And I believe Greg would be the first one to tell you that he's looking forward to getting out of Epping and moving on to Bristol, because Epping was not good to Greg whatsoever. It wasn't really good to KB. KB Titan did not have a good weekend. Unfortunate, but true. Actually, but credit to Chris McGahey, who actually won his first round of competition this weekend.
Yes,
how about that? Yeah, he beat Matt Hartford, who, boy, if you're Matt Hartford, man, you're trying to figure out what happened and why. I mean, they had the little issue in Reading last year. They took the car off to a different location. They fixed the bugs. They won the race, finished the year third in points, and they have had nothing but misery. I believe it's 2 DNQs and a bunch of round one losses. And if you look at Matt Hartford in points, it's not a good look.
No, considering he's down in 13th.
Yeah, who had Matt Hartford in 13th in points 6 races in?
I know I didn't. I agree with you 100%. That is a definite shock, especially because after 6 races in last year, we were ready to talk about Derek Kramer, Matt Hartford, and Dallas Glenn being the next-gen pro stock guys that you're going to see out there winning races and putting stuff, putting wins together and putting championships together. And that kind of didn't last. I mean, well, I shouldn't say it didn't last, because, yes, fast forward 1 year, Dallas Glenn is leading the points again. But Erica and Greg are right on his tail.
Yes, but when you look at the points, you got Derek Kramer in 11th, Matt Hartford in 13th. Chris McGahey 16th. Kenny Delco, okay, he doesn't run all the races. He's 15th. Brandon Foster hasn't even ran all the races, and he's ahead of Derek Kramer and Matt Hartford. I mean, this Jerry Tucker. Jerry Tucker is 6 in points. Who had Jerry Tucker at this point 6 in points? I mean, and no offense to Jerry Tucker, but I view Jerry Tucker as a guy who just kind of showed up, had a little fun, took his qualified 13th, took his round 1 loss, and went on to the next event. I didn't see him 6 at this after 6 races. Credit to him. I mean, I'm not gonna discredit him. Great for him. I just didn't see that. I mean, the pro stock points are Troy Coughlin, even with his win, I believe is 8th. I mean, the guy just won. He's 8th.
And if we're comparing apples to apples and looking at last year to this year, like you said, where those guys ended up. After 6 races last year, Dallas Glenn was still number 1. He had 581 points. This year, he's got 619. So he's been a little more successful this season.
Correct.
But 2nd, Matt Hartford. 3rd, Derek Kramer. 4th, Troy Coughlin Jr. 5th, Aaron Stanfield. Now, Matt Hartford was a distant 2nd. He only had 413 points after the first 6 races last year, whereas Erica, Greg, Jag, and Aaron Stanfield, all the top 5 this year, have more than the 2nd place did even after 6 races last year, which tells you how back and forth it went. But Henry Caruso was 6th in points. Erica Enders was 14th in points after 6 races last year. She's 2nd this year. So we're definitely looking at the seasons being flip-flop, except for Dallas Glenn. He's the only one that's been pretty tried and true throughout.
Yeah, it's definitely a and I hadn't looked at the points until today, and I was just like, what is Matt Hartford doing 13th? And how is Brandon Foster? No knock against Brandon Foster. He's 9th.
Right.
And I think he's missed 2 races. I mean, it's like, wow. Are you kidding me?
Well, and you've got Christian Quadra and David Quadra, who were both attending business functions this weekend and didn't even enter Epping.
Didn't even enter.
Still 8th and 10th in points. And they skipped races. And they skipped a race. So, yeah, it's shocking how bad of a season that some of those drivers have had, and especially comparing to where they were at this time last year.
Correct. And like I said, Troy Coughlin won the event, and he only moved up to 7th.
Yeah,
I mean,
they've been struggling. They've been struggling.
And then you see Jerry Tucker in 6th. Where did he come from? I mean, until I looked at the points, if someone told me where you think Jerry Tucker is, I would have said 11th. I wouldn't have never thought Jerry Tucker would have been 6th in points right now. Yeah, that Pro Stock has always had a history of having a variety of winners and a little bit of shuffling. Not like this.
No.
This is the bad doing good and the good doing bad outside of the top 3. And Matt Hartford, I don't know if he needs to hire a shrink or someone that can get rid of evil spirits, because this guy can't catch a break. His backup driver in the backup car, which was the new car, which he isn't even driving, did better than him did last week in Chicago when he beat Erica.
Right.
And that was the car he didn't even trust. He put someone in it because he doesn't even trust it. Oh man, this is crazy. You know what? If I do the bracket next week, maybe I'll just have Jerry Tucker to win Bristol. Who knows? Everything else has happened this year. I mean, you just never know. And in all seriousness, you wonder when the Quadras are going to get their first win. And I know 2 of them were missing this weekend, but you got to feel like those guys are due any day. The problem is they usually run up against one of their team cars and get beat. It's usually Erica. And they usually get beat. But you got to figure one day one of those guys' day is coming. But once again, credit to Troy. It was pretty much an all-elite league weekend. Once they disposed of Dallas Glenn in the semifinals, it was pretty much their race for the taking. Greg was a no-show for the most part. I mean, Chris McGrahy went more rounds than Greg Anderson did this weekend. It was it was a bunch of, and I don't know if you looked at it, but I've never seen so many 1 second 60-foot times in my life since 1999, maybe. I mean, it was obviously a tough track to get a hold of. I mean, on Sunday, if you went sub 1 second, you were doing pretty good. Everyone was pretty much one flat to 60 foot all day. I know in Q2, I've seen some 980s and some 990s, but once the temperature rose on the track, one flat was about as good as you were going to get in pro stock.
Right.
But you know what? Next week's a new week. There's not really a whole lot to discuss there. Like I said, credit to Troy Coughlin. He did what he had to do, but there was no drama, so to speak, in pro stock. It was just kind of a weekend where Dallas held on to the points lead, showed okay. Greg was gone round one, and Troy did an Antron Brown, what Antron did last weekend. Kind of flew under the radar. There he is in the finals. He holds shots. Erica gets the win. Right. Congratulations. We'll see what happens next week. Do the bikes run next week?
Yes, they're back in Bristol.
It's funny. I wish they were in Epping. I don't know, and I haven't heard anything, but as we all know, if you watch Bristol, that is an extremely bumpy racetrack. I don't know, have they fixed those bumps?
I don't think so, but it was definitely interesting last year to watch them try and get over that hump in the tunnel.
Yeah. I mean, it just carries. It just bounces the front end the rest of the way down. I mean, pro stock cars deal with it. Nitro cars deal with it. It's going to be real interesting with the bikes dealing with it. I mean, I think they would. I mean, you know, the Bruton Smith family and the way they have, how heavily they are invested in their racetracks, you would have thought they would have corrected that by now, unless they just view it as a challenge, so to speak, to cars and competitors. I don't know, but Bristol is going to definitely be interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing the bikes. Once again, you know who I'm rooting for. I think Matt Smith's going to be a thorn in Gage Herrera's side, and I think he showed a glimpse of it in Chicago. And I think next week, assuming everything goes right, I'm riding with Matt Smith next week. That's my pick. The Gage Herrera train stops in Bristol.
Well, it stopped in Bristol last year thanks to Steve Johnson.
There you have it.
But, you know, anything can happen and anybody can go red at any time. And I still think that the only one that's going to beat Gage is Gage himself.
No. I think Matt can outrun him. Matt proved in 3 of those 4 qualifying sessions in Chicago that he can outrun him. I don't know what happened after that. He lost the magic or something, or I don't know what he was doing. But I look for more of that in Bristol. But we'll see. That remains to be seen. It should be fun. Everything should be fun next week. It's good to see them going back to back. We don't have to wait a week.
No, it is very good. Yep. And already on to race number 8 of the season. We are working our way through pretty quickly. Before you know it, it's going to be countdown time because I think that this summer months are going to go by a lot faster than most people think. June's going to be a busy one. We've got Bristol. I believe there's 2 off weeks, and then we're going to Norwalk, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I'm sorry. There's not. So we're racing this weekend or this past weekend here, and we've got Bristol on the 9th, Father's Day weekend's off. Then we're going to Richmond on the 23rd and Norwalk on the 30th. So 4 out of the 5 weekends in June, we're running cars. July, then we get a little bit of a break till the end of July. Only 1 event in August, and then September, we're running same thing, 4 weekends out of September too. So this next stretch run, I think by the time we get to the end of June and we get this Norwalk show took care of, we'll have a pretty good idea of where we're at now versus where we were at this particular stage in time. It'd be interesting to see, you know, mark the points down now, mark where everybody's at now. Let's see what this next stretch run brings. Because that's going to give a good idea of what the countdown could bring later on.
You're right. There's only 1 race in August. What's that, Brainerd?
Brainerd on the 16th, yeah.
That's right, because there's no more Topeka.
Correct. And they did not replace, Denver's gone, and they did not run at Flying H this year.
Yeah, they didn't do Flying H this year. So it's not really, it's just a 2-race swing, not really a swing, just kind of a half of a door.
Just Seattle, Sonoma only, yes, that's correct.
And those are both in July.
The 21st and the 28th, yeah, back to back.
So those are only July races.
Yes, those are the only two in July, right at the end.
Yeah, because Norwalk, I know used to be around that 4th of July, but it looks like it's going to be at the end of June.
Right, which is just right in, because the 4th of July will fall during that particular week, but it was either going to be the weekend before or the weekend after the 4th, because the 4th, the way
Yeah.
it falls. So they end up at it beforehand. So it'll be interesting to see. And like I say, putting together a chunk of 6 races together early in this year, kind of don't really count Gainesville too much because of the conditions and everything. But, Pomona, Phoenix, and then Vegas, Charlotte, Joliet, and Epping were all pretty similar condition-wise. So that kind of gives you like a little bit of a telltale. Gainesville's kind of like a preview of the end of the year more than anything. But then again, it's also kind of hard to gauge and say that that's kind of like countdown related because we did have the 4 wides back-to-back in there too, and that can change a lot of people's strategies and games.
Yeah. We'll see how it figures out. I mean, I'm not a fan. It's hard for me to really count what people did in the 4 wides just because it's so unique and people get confused and people have later lights than they usually do. And it just, I know guys do well there. I don't really, it counts, but I take it with a grain of salt, the 4 wide races. I'm actually glad that they run them back to back because now I got to deal with them no more and I don't have to see them. I mean, it's just not. I've never really been a fan of it.
It counts, but it kind of doesn't because in many ways the 4 wides have their own set of statistical categories. Because like when they're talking about how many final rounds John Force was in and how many final rounds Tony Schumacher was in, technically, if you lose the final at Charlotte or at Vegas, you are given if you finish 3rd or 4th, you are given a semifinal event finish, so to speak. But technically, it should still count as a final because it is the final, and any one of those 4 drivers have a chance to win. So the fact that you disclude them when you consider what somebody's career final round marks are if they finish 3rd or 4th in that run, it messes up a lot of stats, and it's not really, those 2 events aren't going to make or break your season when it comes down to the countdown anyway. So they're not really going to change your seeding too much. So they're there as a novelty. And like you said, they run them back to back. They put on a show. It's unique for the fans. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really count too terribly.
How weird would it be if they changed the second Vegas race to a 4 wide event?
Like if they flip-flopped them and they did the 2 wides in the spring and the 4 wides for the countdown, that would be horrific. All right, I'll pose it to you this way. I know that you're not a fan of it, but let's just say we're getting down to the championship, right? And because they seed the points the way that they do with the win and runner-up being 1st and 2nd and semifinal round points for 3rd and 4th in that final run. Let's say you got the top 4 guys in points and they're all within a round of each other and they're all 4 in that final. And you have a chance to go and make, you can walk out of that event with 60 points or you can walk out of the event with 100 points all on one run. There's potential for drama there. There's a story there. It's
there's potential for someone not to stage in time, and then the tree goes green because of the timers, and then someone's dead late, and it costs them. I mean,
there's John Force and Bob Bodie both leaving before the tree back in 2001 at Vegas too. I mean, anything can happen at any time. There's always a potential, but if you look at it that way, you could have some pretty big point swings. And let's make let's move Pomona somewhere else. Let's just make Vegas the final race, run it 4 wides and make it 1.5 points.
Oh God. So
you could be in that final round of top fuel of one of 4 cars, and if you win, you could make a 80-point swing or 60-point swing with 1.5 points.
You would go to that race?
I sure would watch it. It would be entertaining.
I would watch it, but because I'm in California and I'm not far from Vegas, I sometimes I usually go to the second Vegas race. If they made that the final race, I guess I would go, but that would be so. We watch someone in one of the professional categories every year get screwed by that 4 wide format. Every year, at least one person in one of the categories, not one in each, but at least one between the 4 categories gets screwed by that format. And I would hate to see that happen in a countdown situation.
I mean, I agree, but at the end of the day, that it's no different than the countdown situation in general and having a countdown and Steve Torrance losing it in 2017 after the year that he had. And he's like, this, what do you call it? The welfare point system and, all these terminologies for it. And it's like, you could find a negative in anything, but as long as everybody knows the rules going in and the playing field is what it is, go for it. I'd rather somebody screw up on a tree and lose than somebody lose by their headers being 1/8 of an inch too wide, or their intake manifold being the wrong color, or their start-stop or cutoff switch wired wrong, and lose that way.
You're right. Now, to Torrance's point, he didn't have one. Rod Fuller would be a top field champion if it wasn't for the countdown.
There's a lot of guys that would be champions.
Antron Brown would have 2 additional championships if it wasn't for the countdown.
Yeah.
So when you're Torrance and it hits you, like it's hit those guys, it's like, dude, it is what it is.
But you saw how he responded to that. He came back the next year and won every race in the countdown. He's like, all right, if this is how it's going to be, these are the races I'm going to win. And he won every last one of them.
But
didn't give him a point.
At the end of the day, you had no one to blame but yourself, because if my memory serves me correct, you lost to Antron in round 2 on a hole shot.
Well, and he had the wreck in Dallas. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but I think his whole point was we had such an awesome season and it fell apart in 2 races. We had 2 bad races and we lost. We lost our entire good season over it.
You lost to Antron in round 2 on a hole shot at the final race of the year. Win that round and it keeps going.
Yeah.
You controlled your own destiny to a certain extent.
That's why I look at the same thing with the 4 wides.
No, you don't control your own destiny, because if some clown doesn't stage within 7 seconds and you're sitting there and you're not expecting the tree to go down because you're waiting on the guy to stage and the timers go up and the light goes green, you're sitting there. No, you don't. That's the problem with the 4 wide. You don't control your own destiny, man. Everyone has to rely on each other doing it right. And if there's one hiccup, case in point, Josh Hart, Sean Langdon, and I forgot who the other 2 cars were last year.
Yeah, those are the 2 memorable ones, though. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, in all honesty, I understand the 7-second rule with the pre-stage stage situation, but I don't think it should be there in the 4 wide. I don't. Because it starts the moment the first person puts on the second bulb. If I'm correct.
I thought 3 of them had to be lit.
No, I think it's the moment the first one puts on the bulb, I believe. We have to check that. I believe it's the moment.
I'd have to check that too. I know that they changed the rules for those events, so I'm not sure how that plays out.
Now, maybe it's when the last one is now, but I think back then it was the first person to go in and put the second bulb on, the timer starts. And if you're doing your thing and it's confusing enough looking at all these set of lights, and you're just kind of waiting on making sure, and all of a sudden it just goes green and you're counted out, it's like, well, no.
Well, I guess that makes sense, because, that's how it works in a 2 ride. If you have one person stage, the other person's got 7 seconds. So as the first person in a 4 wide stages, the other 3 got 7 seconds. You're all on the same timer.
Man, that's a lot. It's just, you got to grasp your mind around seeing 4 bulbs up there, and you're looking at 3 additional bulbs, including yours, and you're just trying. I don't like it. I don't like it. I wouldn't like it in a countdown format. It's entertaining for now. I call it a gimmick, but it's entertaining in a countdown format. But we can talk about this all day. We're not going to hold everybody in. I know you are we got allergies right now, so I do thank you for coming on today. I thank everyone who will watch and is going to watch and who does watch. Appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be back next Monday to talk about Bristol. Hopefully Matt Smith gets the win in Pro Stock Motorcycle, stops Gage Herrera. We'll see.
We will
Dave,
see.
thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you. Till next
Always a
time.
pleasure.
See ya.
Night, everybody.
All righty.